But I'm going to kick off with the big question now of the weekend. It's the obvious one, boys. The big question is, when is one better than two? And it was in the spotlight on Friday night.
This is something you can't stop. The competition has problems when Max Gawn's in this sort of form. This is great signs for Melbourne, that you can make those calls and you can get this lift from probably your most important wildcard.
I'm in danger of seeing Max Gawn being reduced to a role player. And I love Max's selflessness in all of this. He's gone, yes, I want Brodie and I want him to be shit. But this is the dominant ruckman as a Melbourne supporter. He's the last 5 times he's the best ruckman in the competition. One of those times he's the captain. He's a 6-time All-Australian.
In my experience with Brodie, he's a natural number 1 ruckman, as is Max Gawn. Brodie hasn't played a lot of football in front of the ball. He's not a natural forward.
I think Max Gawn has suffered as a result. The Max Gawn, the dominant ruckman of the last 6 years, is sacrificing to the point where it's impacting on Melbourne.
And it did impact on Melbourne for a period of time, and it all came to a head on Thursday whenever the teams were announced, when it became apparent that Brodie Grundy was going to be sent back to the VFL to learn some forward craft. And the dominant ruckman, who had been reduced to a role player, as we stated 3 weeks ago, became the dominant ruckman in the competition again in the space of 4 quarters of footy. It was dramatic in the manner that he was able to take over the game. He was the pivotal player in the end, along with Melksham and Petrarca, to get him across the line in just an extraordinary victory. And we'll have a look at some of his influences. And where does that leave Brodie Grundy now is the big question. And then we can discuss Carlton as well, because they've been reduced from their big 2 to just 1 for 6 to 8 weeks. But right now, this is a discussion. It was staggering the way it played out, because he became everything that he was and hasn't been able to do because of his selfless approach.
I think the first thing to acknowledge is how brave the decision was to actually leave Brodie out and to go with, not necessarily to play Max Gawn as a solo ruckman, but to take the extra runner in, to say our front third hasn't been as effective as we need it to be, and we need to change something here. And to kick 100 points was just as pivotal as Max Gawn's performance in the ruck.
I think Max wanted to prove to the football world that, he's still the dominant ruckman the competition goes, because his form had dropped away. Obviously, he hadn't been playing there as much. So it was a big moment, because Max had supported Brodie all throughout the week. So, that was important for him to perform above the level of what's expected. You're not expecting him to have a dominant game like that, even though he's capable of it.
Yeah, well, it's his best game in 4 years. And so for Simon Goodwin, who makes, I agree with you, a brave call to sit back once you've gone through the process of attracting a high-profile player to your club like Brodie, you can feel indebted and then you're making decisions for the wrong reasons. And he didn't. And he said as much, good. He said, this is the way it's going to be. Max came out and supported it, but right now the best thing for the footy club was him to reassume the role.
So is 2/3 of a season enough? So Melbourne have come to the conclusion for this point in time in season 23, is 2/3 of a season enough to make the call on a longer-term basis? Where will Brodie Grundy be next year?
It's a good question. I'll get your answers in a moment. Let's have a listen to what Simon Goodwin had to say post-game.
I want to go on the record here and say we love their ruck combination. But one thing we're not going to do as a footy club is leave any stone unturned in getting better. And we want more impact forward of the ball. And the only way we're going to continue to do that is to expose them for longer. So part of the plan with Brodie is to expose him at VFL footy. They've got a practice game tomorrow against St Kilda, where he'll play purely as a forward, and we'll continue to assess like that. We think we can turn that combination into a threat moving forward, and we're going to work to do it.
No one's better placed, and I heard your comments today. You were absolutely definitive, black and white. Pardon the pun. He won't be a forward, hasn't been a forward and can't be a forward. So you don't think that Simon's saying that by exposing him, hopefully he can get to the level where he can play as a forward? You've got no confidence in that?
Oh, I think this is an intent for every player, is to find a second role that they can go to should you need to shuffle the magnets. And Brodie has been tried as a forward. He's not naturally there. His heart and soul is around being the alpha number 1 ruckman that Max Gawn showed that he was on Friday night. Now, Brodie's done that in the past, and Max Gawn has been the premier ruckman of the last 6 years, but there's been a bloke that hasn't been far off him for that entire time. And if he's been behind him at stages there, he was actually potentially going past him. So the question needs to be for Melbourne is a conversation with Brodie about whether he is prepared to play that role and to be selfless to the point of maybe not playing as much senior footy in the next couple of years whilst Max is still up and about, or
The point is, though, is he capable of doing that? And you've been definitive on that. Like, in your time, you know, what's the biggest percentage of a game would he have played in the ruck? Because he strikes me as he likes to play big minutes in the ruck.
Well, he doesn't like coming on the bench when he's the number one ruckman. Neither does Max Gawn, neither does Toby Nankervis. When you've got a number one ruckman, they believe they can run out the game, and it's seen as a 1v1. It's one of the last really combative positions that exists on the football field. So, and it's still a game where you wear the opposition down. Max Gawn wore down Oscar McInerney on Friday night, and Oscar McInerney's no mug.
I can't see going forward. And you asked the question before, but going forward, I can't see you putting that amount of your salary cap into two ruckmen, Gaz, and one of them's not going to be he's playing out of position. Yeah. If Brodie Grundy now is becoming a forward at the Melbourne Football Club, going forward, it looks like he's going to be. I just can't see that happening from a list management point of view.
Yeah, well. Firstly, the right decision and best decision's been made. So now let's go. Yep. If he doesn't get injured, great. Then you deal with the mess at the end of the year, and it's a depending on how it plays out between now and then. It's a mature conversation. We go, hey, it was a roll of the dice, Broads. We loved it. We love you. We gave it a go. You want to play ruck. I understand that. Someone will pick up Brodie Grundy.
It would still be attractive on that.
$600,000.
Well, imagine going back to his home state, Port Adelaide. Port Adelaide needs a ruck. So, you're not going to, you know, I know there's multiple teams that obviously would have him, but Port Adelaide with that gun young midfield.
And that's okay. And that's where we're at in the footy. This is the footy world. This is a footy. Don't forget, this is a competition where the Gold Coast Suns gave away pick 7 and a player just to get some salary cap off their books. I mean, this is where we're at right now.
One thing that we know is that Brodie Grundy's not under any illusions about how cutthroat and professional this game is.
Well, that's a great way to look at it. He's pragmatic.
Well, he's been forced to because of circumstances. Well, he made a professional decision because he's not going to be in the game forever. So he made the decision, to push really hard for the contract that he got at Collingwood, and he's not there anymore. But he's pragmatic, and he would understand that I'm only in this caper for a limited time. I want to be. Whilst I'm in the middle of it, I want to be the guy.
Just quickly, Gaz, likely or unlikely that Brodie Grundy's at Melbourne next year?
I reckon unlikely, because he'd need to kick 4 goals a game in the VFL to get a spot as a key forward and then do that in the... But I don't know.
Sliding doors. If Max Gawn had done his knee in round 2, we wouldn't even be having this conversation. So we have seen a bit of all of the scenarios.